Alright guys, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video. As you guys can see from the title and thumbnail, today we're going to be reviewing the brand new Star Wars show, The Skeleton Crew. This just finished airing on Disney Plus. You guys can go watch the full show now. I think there's a couple things I want to say before we get into the full review, and maybe it's biased or unbiased. Whatever it is, I think the first thing is, this show doesn't really gravitate towards me personally. I don't know, I just didn't find a super interest. I watched the whole thing, so I'm trying to give it a fair review. I do enjoy Star Wars, but because the Acolyte left such a sour taste in my mouth, it was really hard for me to get super excited about this. But I did watch the whole thing, so I'm going to try to give it a fair review. And the second thing being, a lot of people didn't give this a fair shake because of the Acolyte. A lot of people didn't enjoy the Acolyte. In fact, more people watched the Acolyte than the Skeleton Crew. So if that says anything, a lot of people just had a bad taste in their mouth. So with all that being said, we're going to try to give it a fair shake, a fair review. We're going to not really give too many spoilers, but kind of break it down about the things we did enjoy, didn't enjoy, right from the top. So starting off with, Athen, did you enjoy it, like it? How did you feel about it?
I thought it was a pretty good show. I mean, nothing too crazy. I like Star Wars, obviously, so there's a childish aspect to it, and that I kind of like. I really like watching Anakin do these dumb things in the Phantom Menace when he's a really young boy, all these kind of different kids-like things. I like watching the Clone Wars, so the fact that it felt like it was directed towards kids a little bit doesn't turn me off completely. So I kind of did enjoy it for the most part, but I liked it as a concept. I don't know if I loved it. It wasn't bad in there was nothing that really stood out and made me say, I don't want to watch this. If you go off special effects and all that, it was great. There's no complaints there. Special effects were awesome. There's a couple minor things, and I think Sammy will get to that later, and I think I'll step back in and get to it again, but there's nothing crazy that really detracts me from this show. I really overall liked it. There's no big problems.
Yeah. A lot of people draw this comparison, and I think this is a very fair comparison. It's very reminiscent of like Steven Spielberg kind of a film, a classic George Lucas, very similar to Goonies perhaps. It really feels like a Goonies adventure in Star Wars, and there's really nothing wrong with that. I think this is a true to tale kind of George Lucas idea for a Clone Wars arc, or like a show, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's true to the nature of the Star Wars brand, the storytelling that Star Wars often does. I think this show draws a line. It's very lighthearted, it's fun dialogue, there's lots of childish humor, but there's also some dark turns, there's some dark humor, and I think it all kind of falls in lines with what the classic feel of Star Wars has, and I did enjoy that part of it. The Goonies aspect of like it's not a classic Star Wars story or tale, there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, the show doesn't really have a whole lot wrong with it. The problem is I just don't think it's anyone's cup of tea. I don't think it's my cup of tea personally. But the numbers would also provide that it's not most people's what they would expect from Star Wars. And there's nothing wrong with that either. This show, I think, is kind of intended for a certain crowd of people who like Star Wars, but just kind of want a light-hearted show to watch, you know what I mean? If you've watched the first 6 films of Star Wars with your family, perhaps, and you want a live-action show to watch that the whole family can watch, because sometimes it's kind of hard to get behind an animated show. I can get behind that. I understand that thought process. I think this show is probably one of the easier ones to sit down with a family and watch. This is a very family-oriented kind of show, and I enjoy that. And I think that really goes a long way with the fans, because Star Wars has always kind of been a family-centric thing. I mean, from the first 6 films, it was often about the father, the mother, the son, right? The twins, the siblings, the father role models. It's always been about family structure. It's been a core component of Star Wars, and this show has a lot of that, and I can appreciate that. I think the main characters, I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I think it goes like Fern, Wim, Neil, KB, Jod, and then 33. I don't know the droid. I just know him by 33. I don't remember his full acronym is. They're all pretty good. They all have serviceable arcs in the show. It's probably between Wim and Fern who are like the main characters. Fern, I found often very annoying, but I do feel like that was engineered that way purposely. I feel like her character was supposed to be like a young Anakin or a young Luke, very annoying and just kind of childish, and I don't think there was anything wrong with that. the character of Jad, the pirate slash, we find out at the end of the show he's some sort of Jedi Padawan or some sort. I think his character was probably the best of the show. He seemed to have the most interesting character arc, and he seems very mysterious. I would like to see what kind of character development goes on past this, because his story was definitely not finished by the end of the series, and I think they left it open-ended on purpose. The rest of the characters throughout the show, they're just normal plot devices. Even like the other two kids, they're fun, but they don't really serve much else purpose. How did you feel about the characters, the plot, all that stuff?
I mean, you hit it right on the spot. I really liked Jod. I liked him a lot, and maybe that's because the kids kind of feel like you get them all together. There's no one singular one that's gonna go off and do their own thing too crazy. They all kind of come in as a pack. There's nothing wrong with that. They split up a little bit, but not really. But I really do like Jod for future Star Wars projects, because we often get this Jedi Padawan who survived Order 66, but usually they try to be a Jedi, and they try to be this really good guy. And Jod was one of those few times where he didn't really go 100% the right way. He is kind of conflicted, and obviously we see conflictions through Force users in general, but I thought his character was really well written, and by the way they left him open-ended, I am excited to see him again on the screen.
The plot of the show, I think, was serviceable. I don't think it was super interesting. It reminded me very similar to the idea of Jedi Survivor, not Fallen Order Survivor, with like kind of draws to the Republic era and like going back and finding different memorabilia and just different stories from that era. Another example of that is the book Force Collector by Kevin Shinnick. It's a story of like this kid, and in our case these kids kind of going back and trying to go on this big adventure, and there's these drawbacks to the Republic era with the Jedi and all these different things, and this show had a lot of that. But was it overly important to the Star Wars universe or the 6 movies or the 9 movies in general? The Clone Wars kind of plays a big part into the movies. The Rebel show does, Kenobi does. This show is not really like this. It's its very own separate universe, and I think that also kind of has something to do why I didn't super enjoy it. When you watch a show in the Star Wars universe, you want it to feel kind of important. You want it to feel connected to the bigger scheme, and this show really didn't have any semblance of that. And I don't think it ruined it, but it did kind of take you out of it sometimes. You kind of forget you're watching a Star Wars show. But overall, I think the plot was serviceable. How it looked, the visual effects, the setting, I think it all looked good. I mean, Disney Plus has been doing a better job. I thought Boba Fett, Kenobi, even Mandalorian Season 3, I thought all of those shows looked cheap. I didn't think they used a lot of great setting pieces. I thought some of the visual effects were kind of weak at times, especially like Boba Fett. But like even the Acolyte in this show, Skeleton Crew, they've done a lot better. I think it looks really good. But that's really it. All of that being said, what would you give it a final review, Afton?
I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. No, sorry, a 6.5 out of 10. It's above average. If I'm gonna watch a show, if something's gonna be put on, I think 5 is where I'm like debating if I'm even gonna watch it or just leave. But I'm definitely, if this is put on in front of me, I'm actually gonna pay attention. It kept me into the plot, even though I didn't really have much invested into it. As Sammy pointed out, it's not really affecting any of the main 9 movies pretty much at all to where we've seen this, and that kind of does take you out of it a bit. But the story was pretty well written, and I mean, just for a show in general, I'd watch this. If it had nothing to do with Star Wars, I think it's pretty good, which is kind of a good thing and kind of not a good thing, because Star Wars puts something out, you want it to be Star Wars content. But as Sammy said, the VFX were great. Everything was great. It didn't really feel like it affects the main plot too much, and that's one of the bigger things that I don't love about it, but it's still a pretty good show in my opinion.
Yeah. Alright, I got 2 final things to say about it. If you like Star Wars, like you're just a big Star Wars fan, a big Star Wars nerd, I don't think you're gonna find anything wrong with this, right? Like the Acolyte has some things that might drive Star Wars fans mad, right? Maybe some Star Wars fans like it, they like a different taste, but it's gonna be divisive. This show doesn't have anything divisive in my opinion. I just think if you're just any sort of Star Wars fan, you'll probably enjoy it. I think you should give it a shot. 2, this reminds me of Andor in a way where it is Star Wars, but it's just such a different flavor of Star Wars than we're used to. It's just so outside of the hemisphere of what we usually expect for our Star Wars content. Is that a bad thing, good thing? That's up to who's ever viewing it. It's up to your personal discretion. If you like that kind of stuff, then you probably like this show. If you're not interested in that stuff, you might not be interested in this show. All of that being said, I'd probably give it around the same score Athen did. I think 6.5. Like I said, very similar to Andor. There's nothing really overly wrong with it. Just sometimes it doesn't feel overly important, right? Like, as many times as you want to crap on Kenobi, there were some really cool and important parts of that, right? The Kenobi versus Vader fight, the Kenobi stumbling across Luke and his family, or Qui-Gon. Like, those moments felt very important, very special, very endearing. This show didn't have anything like that. So with all that being said, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. So with all of that, we hope you guys did enjoy this review. We hope you guys enjoy the show. We hope you give it a fair shot, try it out. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments, if you guys agree, disagree, what you thought of the show yourself. And with all of that, we hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. If you guys are listening on podcast, don't forget to hit that follow and download, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.